Hi everyone, and welcome back to Digital Spy. So we're still not all in the office right now, but that doesn't mean we're not desperate to talk about the biggest moments on TV. And this week there's only one show everyone is talking about, and of course that is Loki, which just dropped today, Wednesday the 9th, on Disney+. It's going to be airing every week on Wednesdays, and the team have a lot of mixed thoughts on that premiere. So I was wondering, Ali, let's start with something more positive. What do you think? What's your first reaction?
Cool, yeah, well, I guess just a heads up as well that we'll be doing like big spoilers for the show. For the first episode of the show, I know David and Laura, you've both seen the first two, potentially, but we'll be spoiling the first episode. Not that there's loads to spoil, I would say, but worth flagging that. Yeah, like you said, I think I'm probably the most positive from what I know of you guys so far from the episode. But yeah, I really liked it. I thought it looked great. I think it was cool having. I mean, just debatable, obviously, to what extent there are actual set versus green screen inside the TVA. But I think the production design was really cool. I think having Tom Hiddleston back as Loki is always good, and having him back as this particular Loki from 2012 is just a lot of fun. I think I'd kind of forgotten how funny Tom Hiddleston could be, how charming he is, obviously, and how fun that character could be. So yeah, I was really, really positive on it, and I think it's doing this first episode did a lot of heavy lifting, obviously, in terms of exposition, trying to get you kind of rush everyone through the setup for the show, which I guess if you don't know, I don't know why you're watching this if you don't know, but Loki, like we saw in Endgame, kind of gets booted out of the timeline, steals Tesseract, he lands somewhere else in time, gets picked up by these kind of time police, they take him to their kind of headquarters and kind of run him through, there's a sort of single authority that's overseeing one good timeline, and then it's the episode kind of devolves into a 40-minute therapy session between him and Owen Wilson as they try and work out what it is that makes Loki tick and whether there's a good guy in there that could help them out. And all that stuff, really worked for me. What about you guys?
Well, so I like it in theory, and I agree with a lot of what you said. The visuals are brilliant as always. It's Marvel, we expect that. I like the TVA is a very different kind of world within the MCU that we've not seen, so I'm really appreciating all that. And obviously Tom Hiddleston is amazing. The whole cast is really good, but to me it was a lot of setup, and I know there's 4 phases worth of Marvel now, and we've got there's so many timey-wimey stuff going on, so I appreciate it was needed, but I feel if you didn't have someone as charming as Tom Hiddleston in the lead and a character we love as much, I think it would suffer. I think people are kind of giving it I like it more because it's Loki and not so much the story. I don't know. What do you think, Laura?
So love Loki as a character. Tom Hiddleston's brilliant, really funny. I liked the odd line here and there that was thrown around that did make me laugh, which is what you want from that character. And his scenes with Owen Wilson were brilliant, but that's kind of where my enjoyment of it ended, to be honest. You guys both know that time travel for me is a huge thing that I just can't get my head around, which I think is going to be a major issue now going forward with pretty much every Marvel thing that happens. And because this show is so based on the premise of time travel, and TVA, they are literally the time police, so the whole premise is based on the timeline and time travel, and that I just no.
But why? What is it about time travel that you hate? I always want to pin this down. I fully know.
The very concept that there are multiple versions of people is just ludicrous to me, and I can't. I know, Ali, you're going to be but it does make sense. But to me, it doesn't. The logic of it. I have a very logical brain, and I can't kind of marry the logic with the story. And my partner always says to me, oh, Laura, don't think too much about it and just enjoy it for what it is. Enjoy the story. But I can't, because throughout the entire thing, I'm always thinking, but how would that work? And would that marry together? And just the fact that Loki watched himself die and he didn't know that he died, I was no.
Yeah, I think that's obviously totally fair. You're allowed to not like time travel stuff, so I think that's understandable.
With the exception of Bill and Ted, by the way. Just in case anyone looks on my Twitter and is like, but you love Bill and Ted. Like, that's the only one where I'm like, okay, I can deal with this.
Yeah, I do get that. I guess my two things for both of you are, in terms of the time travel stuff, I think from my point of view, the show does work because the whole kind of setup is that there is no such thing as like the multiverse, right? Like what the TVA says is that like you can't have multiverses, it ends in destruction. So their job is to stop any of the confusion that you're experiencing right now happening in the first place. Like they go back and snip things and make things don't work. And there's that bit where they're like, oh, we're not here to talk about the Avengers because what the Avengers did was already kind of predestined. So they're kind of trying to...
that felt like a cop-out to me.
Yes,
like, let's just ignore this thing over... That's fine. We'll just ignore this thing over here because that's allowed. But then we're going to do all this other stuff over here that's not allowed, and that's really bad.
Well, you're like my article. You're like an article I just wrote today, which is exactly that. And I ended by saying it is a cop-out, I think, because Marvel can now say that about anything. They're like, oh, this is part of the timeline, this is fine. And like, oh, no, this is bad. But it's like, it's so arbitrary, which I know I should just accept at face value. But like, I was with Loki though. I was like, the Avengers are time criminals, lock them up, screw it.
I do get it. I think it's all a little bit too like cinema sins for me in terms of like, that stuff is true, but also like you said, you like the bits with Loki and Owen Wilson, and every scene in the episode is Loki in it. Like Tom Hiddleston is in every scene bar 2 in the whole, like, he is every moment in the show. So I get what you mean, but I also think he does carry it, but he's literally in every moment of it. So it makes sense that he carries it because it's called Loki. He's in every single scene. Him and Owen Wilson talking is the majority of the show. So if those are the strongest bits, then that's kind of fine.
But then I don't want to watch, like, how many episodes are there? 6? I don't want to watch 6 hours of just Loki and character talking if it doesn't like lead to anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is my issue because like I don't even think it's necessarily too complicated. I think considering how much exposition there is, Marvel does a really good job of trying to make it make sense and making it clear. Like in someone else's hands, I think that could have been a nightmare, and it's not, which I love. But at the same time, it really the pace suffers from it. I really feel like not a lot happens in the first episode, and I appreciate and I'm no spoilers, but I've watched episode 2 and I feel like the pace doesn't pick up that much more either. So then I'm like, well, I've watched 2 hours. I could have watched a film which could have covered perhaps everything, and I'm only 2 hours in and not much has happened.
This episode was all set up, like it's all dialogue between them, and like for me that is like what I like when it's done well. I love it, and so obviously I enjoyed it, but I totally get that like basically nothing happened in this first episode. It was all set up, and it's the classic thing of like, it's the would this have been better, as which we can talk about a bit later on. Like, you know, if the episode had all dropped, the series had all dropped at once, would that have been a different experience? Because you wouldn't feel like it was set up and then having to wait so long for anything to actually happen. And like, it's the kind of the WandaVision thing where obviously the 3 of us loved WandaVision, and WandaVision has been the only of the 3 Marvel Disney Plus shows to drop 2 episodes at once at the start, and like how having those 2 side by side kind of made a different viewing experience. And maybe Loki, especially this first episode, could have benefited from an episode where plot happens, if that's kind of what you're into.
Yeah, because WandaVision I think really worked as a weekly show as well, because you know the whole point, it was a meta take on episodic TV. Like every week was supposed to feel different, and there was this big mystery that tied all together that you were really wanting to know more about. Whereas like especially with Loki, I feel like, and also Falcon, this 6-hour movie idea, I don't think it works. I normally like weekly drops, but if you're going to do a 6-hour movie, I feel like, and if you're planning it and writing it as a film, then I think maybe a binge.
Yeah, you can't just slice it up, right? If you're writing a 6-hour movie, you're saying it out loud. Like you've said the quiet part loud. Like you said, it's a movie. It's not meant to be a TV show. And yeah, this definitely did feel like the opening, an unedited opening half an hour of a movie, if that makes sense in some ways.
I think as well, with our TV viewing habits having changed so much over the last couple of years, and everyone's so used to just being able to binge an entire show all in one go, for the weekly viewing to actually work, you need to get to the end of an episode and think, oh my God, I need to know what happens next. And I definitely wasn't left with that feeling at the end of Loki episode 1.
Yeah, because the cliffhanger was like not really much of a cliffhanger, because they kind of said
a reveal.
Yeah, which I mean, I know what happens next, so I won't say so much. But yeah, it's like they could have. They should have either revealed or they should have not said this is a Loki variant.
Yeah.
It could have just been a random, mysterious.
Yeah, because if you've been following the like press cycle around the show, you kind of people have all just been talking about multiple Lokis. Obviously, we know I'm forgetting the actor's name, Sophia Di Laurentiis. She's been cast, and she's like a main character, and she's in all of the junkets, but we didn't see her in this episode. So I'm like, okay, this is pure speculation, but assuming she's female Loki because she's been publicised the most, she's paired with Tom Hiddleston and everything. It would have made sense to have a reveal of them being like, oh, we're going for a variant of you, and then the double reveal of like, oh, it's a woman. Like that would have been a really good. Like, oh, what? How does that make sense? Like, it would have been a cool thing. Yeah. But instead, we kind of had a half step.
It feels like they had the 6-hour film. It's done, and they're like, oh, which points can we split it into these 6 episodes? And then like perhaps if they didn't have a cliffhanger, they're like, okay, let's try and create some kind of cliffhanger thing, because like it didn't feel like a natural cliffhanger to me at all. So we've had a bit of a chat about our initial reactions. So let's hone in on some of the cast, because the cast is phenomenal. Although for me, I do feel like some people are underused so far, although of course, it is a 6-hour movie as it were, so I'm sure everyone's going to become more important. But like, I definitely wanted to see more of Gugu, for example, as the judge. Because there's some... Okay, so I have a little theory. I think there's something going on with her. I think because she keeps saying about, the timekeepers want this, the timekeepers want that, I'm the timekeeper's voice, but we never see these giant space lizards. So like, it could be a Wizard of Oz thing where she's just the one in front really controlling the TVA, but like pretending the space lizards are doing it all. That's just, I jumped very quickly from characters to theory, but I needed to get it off my chest. She's evil.
Yeah. I like that. I like the idea that maybe the timekeepers aren't real or something, and like it's kind of like a setup for a thing. The other theory that I had was like, Laura, as much as you hate time travel, you're going to hate this bit too. A moment that I really loved, in that initial bit where like Loki gets like zapped and stuff, and the guy's like, can you confirm that you're a real organic being that was born and is not a robot? And he says, he's like, do many people not know that they're robots? And I was like, what a funny, interesting line to include in the first 10 minutes of the show. So maybe we're going to get some weird robot stuff. We've had
Oh God!
There's a bit with the the guy who's like the receptionist. He's played by Eugene Cordero, who's in other stuff. He's like, when Loki's like, I'm going to gut you like a fish. And he's like, what's a fish? Which was very funny. And he's like, how do you not know what a fish is? And he's like, I live my whole life behind a desk. I was like, maybe he's a robot.
I mean, relatable, honestly.
I actually love that. I love that character. I want him to be a bit more involved.
Yeah, he was very funny.
He could be the lead. Let's put him in the centre. And
I wanted to talk specifically about Tom Hiddleston, because it's his show. It's called Loki. And I just thought like he was brilliant. Like, as much as like issues you might have had with the pacing or some plot elements, I think he is so strong in it. And I've forgotten, I think, because we've only had like bits of him really across the, like obviously in Thor Ragnarok he's in it quite a lot, but like in the past like 5 years we've only had a few like kind of bits here and there. Obviously he's not in Endgame, and in Infinity War he dies. But I think I've just forgotten how great he was. Basically I've forgotten how funny he is, how charming he is. Like not only Tom Hiddleston, but like Loki as a character is just so watchable.
You can tell he's super comfortable in the role as well. Like it's like a second skin for him, which is, I think, part of the draw. But yeah, and I think he definitely elevates the material. Not that the material is terrible. I'm not like I gave it 3 stars. I don't like hate it by any means, but I do think he's got really good comic timing, and just that rapport, like you said, of Owen Wilson in particular, but kind of everyone. He's just there's not many villains, particularly in the Marvel MCU universe, that could pull off a solo thing. And Marvel isn't the best at fleshing out their villains by any means, but Loki remains the one true, one to aspire to, that kind of thing.
I think the great thing is that he's not an out villain. Like he's kind of, yes, he's done some like terrible things and he's very questionable, but you do still love him. Like you do still root for him in a way. So that kind of helps with that, I think.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think this series is so interesting because obviously, time travel aside, the version of so I think it's super interesting seeing Tom Hiddleston play a kind of different version of Loki than he's been playing for 5 years. That must be quite weird from as an actor. But it's interesting that, so this episode obviously is a lot of him and Owen Wilson talking about, do you like hurting people? Do you want to be a villain? Like, what is it about the things you do that you enjoy, or why do you do them? Which is like really interesting introspection from a Marvel villain. Like, obviously no other villain, Thanos is a big purple space boy, the Dark Elves are just literally just dark. Like, you don't, like you said, he's the best villain, and this really doubles down on what makes him a character. And I thought it was interesting, given that in Ragnarok and Infinity War, the version of Loki that we ended with was really like not happy, was really like a changed person in lots of ways. He was becoming a hero, and kind of having them roll the clock back, be like, okay, we know that we end up in a place where Loki is on the right side of things. He's a good guy, and we know kind of how he gets there, but we never really got a lot of digging into, apart from he's angry that he's half frost giant. We don't get a lot of work into like who he is and why he does the things he does. So I thought this was a really interesting way of like filling the gap there in terms of character work.
Yeah. And I guess that's a running theme that we're seeing with these Marvel Disney Plus shows is they are kind of allowing more time and room for that character development and
totally
digging a bit deeper, and therapy and trauma seems to be like the ongoing theme, doesn't it? So it'll be interesting to see how that carries out throughout the next couple of episodes.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's so true.
I really
appreciate the therapy stuff.
I really appreciate all that stuff. We're 3 shows in, and I'm just hoping it doesn't become every single one. Like, you can flesh out a character and have more time without always being trauma. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but I'm sure they won't necessarily. I think Moon Knight probably will, but I think Ms. Marvel, for example, is going to be a lot more like just fun high school. Yeah.
She-Hulk.
And She-Hulk,
I think maybe it's like the new characters we're getting will be like the more straightforward Marvel show. Not straightforward, but more like happy-go-lucky shows maybe, and these ones where it's like, let's dig into why you did these terrible things.
Yeah, which I love, but I just think let's bring some more variety to it.
Yeah, I really loved the animation where they kind of showed Loki exiting, and it was cool.
Yeah, it kind of looked like a school PSA, didn't it? Of like, this is how clocks work.
It was a really smart and fun way to do that exposition, and I think it's really interesting as well because it's, I think it really does set up the future of the MCU, perhaps more than anything we've seen in a long time, because it talks about nexuses and the multiverse, and we know in WandaVision there was a secret ad which mentioned the nexus. I think it was pills, I can't remember, but like each one was supposed to mean something. Yeah. And it's the same writer who's doing Loki and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
Oh, cool.
So if the multiverse is now that we know it's a thing, and if the multiverse is going to come in and get broken somehow, and we also know Wanda is kind of like flicking through the multiverse trying to find her kids, it looks very much like Loki is going to build into Wanda's big multiverse madness thing, which I'm not explaining very well, but that's going to therefore set up Doctor Strange too. So I think Loki ties them together.
We saw that we've had that conversation about when Loki ends, is the Marvel universe going to be like a multiverse? It's going to split up, and then if we had Loki ends, there's a multiverse, Loki reappears in this timeline, we're not going to get into it, and everything continues as it did, except now there's a multiverse, then that doesn't mess up the timeline, WandaVision can end, and we can have Nexus beings and all that stuff, so that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, there was a couple of other moments I want to talk about specifically with 2 things with Tom Hiddleston. His chemistry with Owen Wilson, who I thought was great. I wish he didn't really do a lot in this first episode, but he's great. He looks great. He looks like John Slattery in the MCU. It's very strange to me that they're very, very similar looking men, but it worked for me. And their chemistry was really good. And the bit which is in the trailer, but the bit where Owen Wilson is like, "Oh, a big metaphor guy," like stuff like that. It's like, yeah, this is funny. Like, just let them go on adventures and like joke with each other, and that will be kind of enough. I liked Owen Wilson a lot.
He's really good. I think he's great in it. I feel like I'm always saying but I feel like he's doing the best Owen Wilson that Owen Wilson can do. Like he's very good. He's very, very good, and it fits the character, and the rapport is brilliant. But it is very Owen Wilson. I guess that's kind of true of everything he does.
But that's what I was going to say. Like Owen Wilson is Owen Wilson in every that he does.
He does it well.
It lends itself to this character, I think.
Definitely.
I loved the bit where it was like him as DB Cooper, like hijacking the plane. I thought that was so funny. Like such a good smart little thing. Like, yeah, I just thought it was hilarious. Like, oh yeah, what if actually this huge historical heist was actually just Loki the whole time?
See, that went straight over my head because I didn't know what the reference was. I picked up on the fact that it must be referencing something.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what the reference was.
Yeah, I was kind of the same. And it just felt really random to me. It was like, oh, we're in this room for ages. Let's do something that's us not talking for a minute. I don't know. It didn't.
I loved it. I mean, I guess if you don't know the reference, then like it's not going to work. But like DB Cooper was like the pseudonym they gave to this guy that hijacked a plane in the 70s and disappeared and was never heard of again. So like that, everything that we saw on screen was basically a true story. And so just them being like, yeah, maybe that was Loki. Like I just thought it was funny, and him flirting with the air hostess really worked for me. Like I think I just find Tom Hiddleston so charming that I was sold.
Now I know the true story is quite clever that they kind of connected those two. I kind of want to talk about when he got naked because I saw David tweet about it, and I thought you were trolling us all, David. I was like, that surely like that doesn't actually happen, and David's just like causing havoc on Twitter. And then when I watched the episode, I was like, oh my god, it did happen.
Right? I mean, I would have tweeted that regardless if it happened or not. But
yeah,
like...
I assumed it was you just like doing a David.
Well, it's important that, you know, like this is my key update. This is my contribution to this here is how quickly do men get naked in Marvel Disney.
I think it's interesting that you brought up Laura though, because it's so funny. Like obviously, 2 weeks ago we had the huge conversation online about Chris Hemsworth. That photo from Thor: Love and Thunder came out, and obviously he's getting in shape to play Hulk Hogan, which is why he's the size he is. Like obviously Marvel have pushed him to be a certain size, but he's playing a professional wrestler who literally is built completely differently. It's kind of shocking to see him, and obviously he's in that shape for a different role, but people are still rightfully brought up the fact that like Marvel sets these crazy male body standards, and actually I was quite shocked seeing Tom Hiddleston look like that for that 3 seconds. Like, was that worth it? Like, what kind of hell did he put himself through to look like that for literally 4 seconds of it?
Well, hopefully we'll see more. Like, let's not discount this like potential possibility. But yeah, I was surprised too because he's very a slender character and he's a slender guy. So it's interesting that they like because you don't really notice it necessarily when his clothes are on still, like because he still looks quite slender. It's just so like built.
Yeah,
slender.
It was a lot.
Yeah. I'm hoping for the opposite of what Laura hopes. I'm hoping for a lot more time travel, hopping around. I want to see Loki in ridiculous disguises, doing ridiculous Loki things in like the 70s, the 1500s, dinosaur time. I want it all. So
the classic dinosaur time.
Of course. Loki riding Loki on a pterodactyl. Yeah. That'd be most important, yeah. Definitely. But yeah, I think it would look good on him. And also we're going to see President Loki at some point. The trailer showed us, so... That was from a comic book run where Loki ran for president because obviously he was going to do a better job than Trump. So I'm interested to see how that plays out here. I think they're going to mix it up, but maybe he wants to take over America. Maybe he lives in the White House.
I think I'm interested to see, big picture, I'm kind of, despite not loving this way of talking about these things, like I am interested to see what the wider impact on the MCU is. I think I can imagine a world in which they've set the TVA up as this organization that stops the multiverse from happening, and we know that Marvel potentially wants to do multiverse stuff, so I can see a world in which this show ends with the TVA being destroyed, multiverse is becoming a thing, everything's a free-for-all, because that kind of makes sense, right? Because currently the TVA's whole thing is, no, you can't do that, and we know that Marvel Studios wants to do that, so eventually those two things there's going to be a payoff there. So that's going to be interesting. And yeah, like you said, let me see. Like I said, I love the DB Cooper like mini scene. So give me more of like Loki in funny situations, being flirty. Like that's gonna be fun. I'm interested to see. I moaned about it on Twitter. Obviously, we get the very brief glimpse in the trailer and in this of Loki's personal documents and the file, in which it refers to his sex as being fluid. I think if you are LGBTQ and you're a Marvel fan, you're probably very hesitant to think about what that means because Marvel have a track record of not doing anything interesting at all with queer characters. And I can very easily see a world in which that's it. Like, that as much as we get is literally one line in the document that says Loki is gender fluid. And and so, or we see a female Loki, but the show never talks about what that means. But I would love that to not happen. I would love to have a scene in a Marvel show where Loki talks about what it means to gender fluid or what it means to be non-binary or GNT. Like that would be amazing. But
definitely. I hope people don't congratulate Disney too much yet on just that one throwaway one word on a document, that we haven't even seen. But I'm really hoping that pays off a bit more later down the line. And especially, if they do bring in a separate lady Loki, then that's kind of frustrating potentially, because I think it would be a lot more interesting to see this Loki become Lady Loki and then actually explore that gender fluidity on screen rather than just have two separate people, because then it's just, you can just say, oh, it's just a variant, it's just an alternate, and then it's not really exploring queerness at all like in comics. And speaking of that as well, I am, in terms of the wider MCU impact, I'm really hoping Young Avengers every single time there's a new show. I always wanted to set up Young Avengers because it's a super queer, amazing successor to the regular Avengers, and every show has been setting this up now. We've got the Patriot from Falcon and Winter Soldier, Isaiah Bradley. We've got Wiccan and Speed, Wanda's kids from WandaVision, who are sort of dead but sort of floating around somewhere with their disembodied voice. So I would love to see some Kid Loki, Teen Loki action at some point, which sets up
I think
Young Avengers.
I can see that happening, right? Because this is comic tangent, but the way that we get Kid Loki in the comics is that it's through the variant situation, right? It's that there are two Lokis, the true Loki one of the Lokis dies and the other Loki kind of becomes a teenager. So you can see the building blocks are there for them to do that stuff.
Definitely, which is super exciting for fans. And also it's just because Tom Hiddleston can't do it forever necessarily. I mean, well, not that you can't have both. Maybe there'll be teen Loki, adult Loki, lady Loki, all the Lokis running around, who knows. But I'm definitely hoping for some more variety. So that's what we thought of Loki here at Digital Spy. If you disagreed or you think there's some stuff that we missed that's super important, just let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more from Digital Spy. Thanks, guys.